You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion new single, my hater, the big better put on the road, I just spit. I know we got $1 million, the devil, that shit ain't not cheaper than again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 8th part of What If Naruto Enters Total Drama Island. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Pixel's Fanbook on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Despite Gwen's suspicions of Heather, the goth didn't really have enough time to think about it further as Chris announced it was time to start the challenge. So both the goth gopher and the brick house base were quick to start climbing the cliffside. Both were doing their best to avoid setting off obstacles, with DJ gaining the lead thanks to his strength. But Gwen seemingly starts to catch up to him in an attempt to gain the lead as she quickly climbs up the cliff side, and she succeeds in passing DJ to gain the lead, only for her to set off a series of explosions, which blows her right off the wall. Gwen screams as she starts falling, but thankfully, she stops not long after as Heather stops the ropes below. "Don't worry. I got you," Heather yells while keeping the ropes in place to let Gwen get back onto the wall. She wasn't aware that Chris was lurking around nearby. "I promised surprises," Chris says as he suddenly appears in front of the camera. He then pulls out a SQR gun, but it wasn't filled with water. No, it had something special from an idea he gained after seeing the base boys in the previous challenge. "Habanero pepper sauce, anyone?" he asks with a grin as he pumps the SQR gun. He then aims the SQR gun at Heather and proceeds to douse her in the spicy sauce. Heather screams as she's completely covered in the habanero sauce and quickly starts rubbing her eyes to get it out of them, while letting go of the HRNSS. She looks and glares at Chris with irritated eyes. "What the hell, Chris?" she yells, feeling her eyes beginning to burn from the pepper sauce. She rubs them again, not seeing the ropes were moving. "Ah!" Heather hears screaming as her eyes widen in hearing who was screaming before a loud thud was heard. "Ow!" She turns and sees Gwen on the ground in pain since she had fallen from the wall. "Muy caliente," Chris says in a satisfied tone as he flashes his shining, literally, teeth to the camera. He then aims the pepper sauce gun at Duncan and fires at the delinquent, dousing him in the spicy contains, just to see Duncan seemingly be unaffected by it. Confused, Chris looks at Duncan to see why wasn't he in pain like Heather, only to see the delinquent turn and catch some of the sauce with his mouth as he reveals he was wearing sunglasses for protection. Chris stops firing and Duncan swallows the sauce as he licks his lips and smirks. "Is that the best you can do?" Duncan asks. "Is that the best we can do?" Chris asks in a hushed tone to the man behind the camera. A few minutes passed and Gwen was back climbing the wall as she once again was starting to catch up to DJ. Some moments pass and she starts pulling ahead of the brick house once again as the two were pretty high up the wall. Heather sees Gwen was taking the lead and sees just how high up on the wall that she decides to pull her plan. "Come on, Gwen," Heather calls out to the goth as she grabs the second rope she set up with a grin. "You don't want to fall behind," she yells as she pulls down the second rope. Everyone would later realize Heather was making a pun, but the moment she pulled onto the second rope, it wasn't connected to the HRNSS on Gwen but rather, it was connected to her skirt, which resulted in it getting ripped off from her body and revealing her dark purple panties with a small skull on the right backside to everyone, both on the island and to the viewing audience, while the skirt falls onto DJ's face. Everyone was shocked in seeing Gwen's panties, but some of the guys start grinning at the sight as Naruto was looking at the goth's butt. "Whoa, well, I've got to say, Gwen sure has a nice butt," Naruto thought, admitting to himself that Gwen's butt was attractive, to say the least. As if hearing his thoughts, Dawn turns to him and her eyes widen in shock at something she was seeing within his aura. Just as he was about to think on this further, he suddenly felt something light jump and latch onto his back and his sight suddenly blocked by something. Huh? What the dash? The rocker says, wondering what was blocking his eyes and what was on his back. You don't need to see this. He hears Dawn speak in a strained voice, with something else in her tone, but he doesn't pick up on it since he realizes it was her who jumped onto his back. What? Dawn. What are you talking about? Naruto asks, wondering what she was talking about, while also wondering why was she on his back. I said you don't need to see this. He hears Dawn shouting and he flinches, making him realize he should listen to her. What he wasn't seeing was that Dawn was blushing as she was on Naruto's back, with her hands on his face. This strange reaction from Dawn was brought by what she saw in his aura. She didn't hear his thought but she saw his aura gain a new color which represented attraction, and she saw him looking at Gwen's butt. She realized what he was attracted to and acted fast by jumping onto his back and wrapping her hands onto his eyes to block the sight, but this also made her blush since she was feeling a pit in her stomach, and this surprises her as she's never felt or acted like this before. She turns to Heather, who has a smug smile on her face, and she frowns. Damn it, Heather. Why would you go and do this? The nature lover yells in her mind. Unaware of either of them, Lindsay was also frowning as she saw Naruto looking at Gwen before Dawn jumped onto his back and blocked his sight. Gwen feels a gentle breeze on her butt and she looks down to see what was going on, only to see her skirt had been ripped off and her skirt on DJ's face. Well. Duncan starts saying with a grin as he takes off his shades to look at the sight of Gwen's panties. You don't see that every day. He says. Courtney sees him looking at Gwen's panties and all she could do was growl silently while also feeling a strange pit forming in her stomach. No, you don't, my man. Chris says, he wasn't looking as he had his head turned to the side. No, you don't. He says with a frown. He didn't want to look at Gwen since it would be worse for an adult to be perving on a teenager. DJ removes the skirt from his face, and gets a point-blank view of the goth's butt and underwear. This shocks him, which leads the brick house to let go of the wall and start falling. Gwen quickly sees her skirt in the air and grabs it. Duncan sees DJ falling and snaps out of his lewd haze as he pulls the rope to try and keep DJ from falling, only for his foot to suddenly get tangled up in the HRNSS, causing him to get sent up in the air. In the end, Duncan and DJ both crash into one another as they find themselves suspended mid-air hanging upside down. Ah, this bite. Duncan grunts out in pain from the collision. Ugh, big time. DJ agrees as the two guys knew they lost the challenge and would have to wait for help to come. Gwen sees she was the last one on the wall and knew she had to climb up to win, but she couldn't since her butt is out and visible for all to see. She tries to cover her butt but she sees it was fruitless as her skirt is torn up, plus trying to put on clothes while hanging from a cliff side wasn't exactly the best place to do so. So, she decides to work with it. Ah, screw it. Gwen yells as she holds her skirt in her mouth and quickly resumes climbing the cliff. She quickly climbs while dodging the remaining traps and she soon finds herself on the top of the cliff. Looks like the Gophers have won the first challenge. Chris says, and the Gophers cheer while the base just sigh at their first loss. Gwen hears the cheers below as she takes her skirt out of her mouth and smiles. Yeah. Gwen cheers as she raises her hands in victory, only to remember her panties were exposed for all to see. She quickly grabs her ruined skirt and uses it to cover herself. CRP. She yells with a pink tint appearing on her cheeks, knowing she is so not going to hear the end of this back home. Confessional, Heather. Told you I'd get my revenge on you, Gwen. Heather says, sitting in the confession booth with a smug grin. I wish you good luck, Gwen, with all the pervs out there here having your panty shot. She says before laughing a little. End confessional. Time skip, 15 minutes later. Location, Main Lodge Camp Wawanika. Round 2 was about to start and we find ourselves in the main lodge. On one half, we see Bridget and Jeff for the killer base, while on the other side, we see Lindsay and Trent for the screaming gophers with Bunny sleeping inside Jeff's pocket. Spotlights go off and shine down onto both teams as someone comes flipping in the air from the base side of the lodge and landing behind a podium, with Chris himself coming up from under it and making it look like he was the one who performed the stunt. He straightens his shirt a little before looking at the camera and grins at it. And now, round 2. The extreme cooking challenge. Chris yells with an overly dramatic tone. But he couldn't be taken seriously, as the real person who performed the flip could be seen trying to crawl away with everyone's eyes on him as he left the lodge. Chris clears his throat, regaining everyone's attention. Each team must choose who cooks and who eats. The host explains the challenge. "I think you should cook, Bridge," Jeff says, catching Bridget by surprise as the surfer chick turns to him with wide eyes. "You sure?" Bridget asks and Jeff nods his head. "Yeah, you killed it with those noodles you made in the last challenge. I trust you can do the same here," Jeff sincerely says with a smile. Bridget was taken aback by this, but she soon finds herself smiling at the party boy for completely having faith in her. "Thanks, Jeff," Bridget says. Meanwhile, at the gopher's side, Lindsay places her hand on Trent's shoulder, gaining the guitarist's attention. "Oh Todd, I'll be the cook," Lindsay excitedly says to Trent, getting his name wrong in the process. All the while Trent nervously smiles at her. Confessional, Trent. "Okay, so she's no Stephen Hawking, but hey, it's cooking," Trent says in a calm and cool tone. How bad could she screw it up? End confessional. Today, you'll be preparing fugu sashimi, the traditional Japanese poisonous blowfish. Chris explains to the 4 campers, causing 3 of the 4 teens to freeze upon hearing what he just said. Chef comes out of the kitchen, pushing a fish tank containing 2 pink blowfish, 1 for each duo. A gong goes off as Chris grabs a pointing baton and points it at a screen that shows all of the organs of the blowfish with the use of a projector. The fugu blowfish contains enough lethal toxins to kill up to 30 people in one sitting, he says. Chef grins as he taps the tank containing the blowfish with a net, causing them to puff up and release their spikes. He dips the net into the tank and uses it to catch the puffed-up fishes before taking them out of the net and holding them up by their tails. Fishes. Meet your maker. Chef yells with a wild grin as he tosses the fish at the 2 teams, with the fish landing on cutting boards that were on the table. They must be sliced very carefully to cut around the poisonous organs. Chris explains while he points to the organs on the projection that were labeled as deadly. The poison paralyzes the nerves, and there is no antidote. So, no worries, the host says with a grin, as Jeff, Bridget, and Trent were worried. Trent especially. He was panicking. He swallows the lump in his throat as he looks at Lindsay and sees the bombshell poking their blowfish with a knife. He quickly grabs her by her shoulder and makes her look at him. "You have taken biology, right?" Trent asks. He did need to ask this since this did require someone who knew how to dissect organs from a being. Lindsay nods her head. "Yep," Lindsay says, and Trent lets her go with a sense of relief. He lets out a sigh, feeling less worried since Lindsay knew what she was doing. "Begin," Chris announces, and both of the girls on each team start preparing the rather deadly fish. About 50 minutes into the challenge, both teams were told to stop preparing their sushi. With Bridget, the surfer girl had made a rather appealing display with her sushi that looked like it was prepared by a professional sushi chef. It was well made, neatly stacked, and prepared well. As for Lindsay, the blonde bombshell had practically mashed the organs of the fish into mince. Lindsay sees Bridget's dish and feels like hers isn't as good looking as the surfers', so she quickly pulls out a bottle of ketchup and quickly adds in last-minute adjustments. The first to try the fish was the base. Bridget presents her sushi to Jeff and the party dude hardly hesitates in picking a piece up and inserting it into his mouth. Everyone watched him in silence, waiting to see if he would be poisoned by the toxins. Jeff swallows the sushi and waits for something to happen, but when he notices nothing is happening to him, he smiles, realizing that there are no toxins in the sushi and it was delicious to boot. Excellent. Jeff compliments Bridget with a smile and doubles thumbs up as the surfer girl blushes at the praise. Chris and Chef nod in approval before turning over to the two gophers as Lindsay presents her minced fish dish to Trent. Trent looked down at the dish and winced at it as it looked ugly, especially if compared to Bridget's dish, and the ketchup smiley face didn't help either. Hesitantly, Trent picks up a fork, scoops some of the probably underdone fish with it, and inserts it into his mouth. Trent quickly chews and swallows the blowfish as everyone watches him to see what will happen. Trent was silent for a bit as everyone waited to see what would his reaction be after eating, only to see him twitch momentarily before he suddenly started punching himself in the face several times and let out a loud, pain-filled scream. After that, he stops and seems fine, to the point that he chuckles and smiles at Lindsay, who thinks she did a good job, but that doesn't last long as a loud gurgling sound comes from Trent's stomach and the guitarist collapses to the floor and everyone was shocked. Jeff quickly covers Bunny's eyes as Trent's skin starts turning blue while he was trying to stand back up. He looks at Lindsay. "I thought you said you passed biology?" Trent asks in a slurring voice, trying to fight back the urge to throw up. "You asked me if I took biology and I said yes. I never said I passed it." Lindsay clarifies the misunderstanding here as Trent soon gives out and falls back to the floor. Lindsay looked over to see if he was alright, only for her to wince in disgust at seeing him puking. "You!" she yells. Everyone else wince, seeing vomit lacking out of Trent's mouth while his body stiffens on the floor. "It's cool," Chris says, walking over to the teens and looks at Trent to check up on him. "Give him 24 hours and he'll be up walking and breathing, good as new." The host reassures everyone before he turns around and starts walking away. Is anyone gonna help this guy?" Jeff asks, seeing Chris leaving. The party dude's question would soon have an answer in the form of Chef, who walks toward Trent in a nurse's outfit. The African-American bends down to the paralyzed guitarist and to everyone's horror, processes to perform mouth-to-mouth onto Trent, with everyone turning away from the horrifying scene. Time skip, a few minutes later. Location, the Dock of Shame. After the blowfish incident, Trent was taken to the medical tent for rest and treatment. However, he would be out of the game for the rest of the day, meaning the Gophers were down a man. Unfortunately, the one who would be taking care of the paralyzed guitarist is Chef, and let's just say, he's not a professional in terms of medical care. Taking this moment to have a chance to relax, Jeff and Bridget changed into their swimsuits to have a drip in the lake. And this is where we see the blonde duo, running down the dock for their swim. Last one in is a rotten blowfish. Jeff yells as he and Bridget run to the other side of the docks, ready to jump into the water, only for the party dude to stop upon realizing something. Whoops. Whoa. Almost messed up big time. The party dude says before he reaches into his trunk pockets and pulls out Bunny, who was sleeping. "Gotta put Bunny in a safe spot first. It would be a bad idea to swim with him in my pocket sleeping," he says as he walks over to the lifeguard seat and gently places Bunny on it. "There you go little dude, nice and safe," he says while walking back to Bridget. "You were so brave to eat that fish," Bridget says as Jeff looks at her. "It was no biggie, I knew I could trust you. You're cool," Jeff says, flashing a smile at her. "Ah really?" Bridget says as a blush starts to form on her cheeks. Jeff nods. "Yeah, you are," Jeff says, being honest with her as Bridget smiles. "But you know what else is?" he asks, causing Bridget to raise an eyebrow at this as he runs towards the end of the docks and jumps. "Cannonball!" he yells, splashing into the water, while also splashing Bridget. Bridget squeals from the sudden splash. She is soaked as she looks at Jeff, who was floating in the water, looking at her with a grin. Seeing this, she grins. "Oh, you're so going to pay for that." She yells before into the water beside Jeff, splashing him as they start playing in the water. Unaware to both of them, they were being watched, not by the audience though, but by someone else not too far. "Okay, everything seems fine, and it looks like you're scoring some points, Jeff." "Nice man," Naruto says, sitting on the stairs by the main lodge, spying on the two with a pair of binoculars he borrowed from someone. He was looking at the pair when he didn't notice someone appearing next to him. "How's Bunny Patrol going?" A voice speaks beside him, causing him to flinch and nearly drop the binoculars as he turns to see who it is and sees Dawn standing next to him. "Sorry for that," she says with a giggle as Naruto lets out a sigh of relief. "Nah, it's fine. I should be getting used to you appearing like that by now," Naruto says. "So, how is Jeff doing?" Dawn asks while Naruto uses the binoculars to look at the swimming pair. "Pretty well actually. Jeff put Bunny onto the lifeguard seat before he jumped into the water," Naruto says as he looks at Bunny, who was sleeping on the lifeguard seat, soaking in the nice sunlight. "See, what did I tell you? You have nothing to worry about. Jeff is capable of taking care of Bunny. You should have more faith in him," Dawn says, and Naruto nods with a sheepish expression on his face, knowing she was right. "Yeah, guess my instincts got the better of me," Naruto says, rubbing the back of his head. He looks up at the sky, sees where the sun is positioned, and sees it is noon, meaning lunchtime. He gains an idea and looks at Dawn. "Say, do you want to get lunch with me, because I'm starving?" he asks. Dawn looks at him with a surprised look, but she smiles and a blush appears on her cheeks as she shyly looks away from the rocker and nods. "I'd love to," Dawn says, putting her hands together and behind her. The two then leave the stairs and head into the main lodge, ready to get something to eat. However, the two had left at the exact moment things were going south for Jeff and Bunny, as Bunny would not return, never again. Some time passes and we once again find our campers with Chris in another part of the forest where they were to be briefed about the next part of the challenge. Naruto, Dawn, Jeff, and Bridget had rejoined their team. Naruto and Dawn were looking happy with each other while Jeff and Bridget were looking rather nervous. Good news, the third round involves 5 more challenges. Meaning, this is the 5 blind challenges, Chris says with a grin while the majority of the campers groan upon hearing this. It begins with the blind William Tell, followed by the blind trapezes, and finally all that concludes with the blind toboggan. The host explains the next part of the challenge. As Chris was explaining, DJ chose this as the perfect time to talk to Jeff regarding Bunny. "So, how's Bunny doing? I miss him," DJ asks Jeff, with the party dudes and Bridget's eyes widen at hearing that, knowing what happened to Bunny after Naruto and Dawn had left. Bunny, he's fine. I left him back at the cabin to rest up. I'll go get the little dude," Jeff says, with an expression of regret and guilt as he turns and starts walking back to the campground, pretending to head back to the cabins. "Oh no." Dawn lets out quietly, but due to how close he was to her, Naruto hears her and looks at her. "What?" Naruto asks. Dawn looks up at him with a concerned expression. "Bunny, is..." Dawn couldn't finish what she was saying as Naruto just looked at her in confusion before looking at Jeff walking away and then at Bridget and saw her nervous expression right as he connected the dots in his mind and his eyes widened, realizing what happened to Bunny. "Oh no," Naruto says, now feeling bad for DJ since he had seen how much he cared for his pet companion. Speaking of the brick house, Chris had put on a pair of safety goggles on his face while also putting on an arrow on top of his head, leaving DJ confused about all this. But before he and the others could think about what was going on, Chris started explaining the first blind challenge. Like the legendary tale of William Tell, you'll be knocking arrows off your partner's head, with apples. Chris says, throwing an apple in the air. His explanation leaves those present confused. Wasn't it the other way around? Courtney asks, feeling like Chris had messed up the legend. Hush. Chris quiets Courtney as he then continues while pulling out a blndfld. Also, the shooter will be blindfolded. He says with a smirk, looking at DJ. The others see this and quickly realize what the arrow and the safety googles were for. Everyone moves away from DJ, who was frozen in shock as he too realizes he was the test dummy. Chris puts on the blndfld and pulls on a slingshot with an apple. The person who knocks off the arrow while managing to cause the least amount of facial damage wins. Like so. The blindfolded host says as he aims where he thinks DJ was standing and releases the apple. The hit was successful in hitting DJ, but it didn't hit the arrow, nor his face. DJ cries as he drops to his knees, holding his family jewels. Every guy present winces from the hit, feeling the phantom pains as Chris pulls up his blndfld and sees what he did. Ah, nuts. Chris winches before he grins, moving on to the challenge. Owen and Heather, you'll be one team while Courtney and Katie, you'll be the other. He says while Naruto was helping DJ up to his feet. I'm violently allergic to apples. Harold says with his hand raised in the air. The other campers and Chris raise their eyebrows while one of the campers discreetly face palms at this. Why did you bring that up when you're not the one involved in the challenge? Naruto asks, wondering why would the nerd say this when he wasn't in the challenge. Harold utters, trying to find something to say while looking around, more accurately, at someone as Dawn sees this and turns in the direction at where Harold was looking and sees Heather. She narrowed her eyes at this, feeling something was up. Fortunately, Katie chimes in. Oh, let me shoot. I'm a good shot. Katie says, ecstatically as Courtney just looks at her before she sighs. Fine, you better be. Courtney says. Okay, let's rock and roll. Chris yells. Soon, Courtney and Owen were lined up, standing in front of Katie and Cody as the two shooters took aim and fired their apples at the two. Most of the Gophers' apples missed the arrow but some hit Owen as the big guy shrugs the hits off with ease. The base apples on the other hand. Ow. Oh. Courtney cried out as the apples Katie was firing at her kept hitting her body and the others just winced each time an apple hit her. This would go on for some time until Cody, with a lucky shot, manages to hit the arrow off Owen's head just as the big guy was starting to feel the effects of the hits. Did I get a bullseye? Cody asks, peeking under his blndfld and sees the apple with the arrow, and realizes he won the challenge. Meanwhile, Katie didn't hear what Cody said and just aimed where Courtney was, who was started to have bruises on her face and parts of her body. I've got her this time. Katie says, pulling up her slingshot. Katie, stop. Cody won already. Chris yells but the tan twin doesn't hear him and continues to aim. Katie, stop. The other base members yell, trying to stop their teammate but once again, she doesn't listen and aims. Listen, you moron. The challenge is OH. Courtney was yelling at Katie but she was interrupted by an apple hitting her square on the forehead, resulting in a large bruise. Katie continues to fire rapid shots in every direction as one hits a bear who was taking a CRP in the bush, a duck in a pond, and a goat square on the head, resulting in it falling off a cliff. A few apples soar towards the two teams, forcing them to duck as Chris runs to Katie just as she was about to fire one more apple and grabs her by her shoulders, stopping her. Katie. Stop man, it's over. Just stop. Chris shouts. This finally gets to Katie as she lifts her blndfld and looks around to see the damage she caused. Oh, sorry. Katie says with a sheepish expression. Courtney wasn't amused as she was swaying from side to side. You're going to pay for that. That was all Courtney could say before she collapsed to the ground, alerting everyone as the base head to their fallen teammate and see she was knocked out. And it looks like Courtney's out for the day. Chris says, seeing Courtney KO'd. Medic. He calls for the medical team to take her to the medical tent so she can recover. But that meant the base was now a member short. We now see Chris and the campers, minus Courtney and Trent, had moved to another part of the forest where a trapeze had been built. And now, the blind trapezes, Chris says as the campers look down and see a small body of water underneath the trapezes. To avoid serious injuries, the trapezes has been set up over this pond, which has been filled with jellyfish. He says as the campers gasp at hearing this. One of you will be stand blindfolded platform until your partners tell you when to jump and hopefully catch you, or else it will be a hell of a painful swim. Now, for who will be doing the challenge? Eva and Dawn are up for the base while Heather and Lindsay are up for the gophers. The host says. Wait, why are Lindsay and I doing another challenge again when we've already done ours earlier? Heather asks since she has already done part for the day. Because, if you compare your team and the base, there's a massive difference in the number of members, meaning some of you would do more challenges regardless. Plus, Trent being MIA doesn't help your case either. Chris says with a smirk, as Heather sighs, knowing she can't argue with him. She, Lindsay, Dawn, and Eva climb up the trapeze to get ready for the challenge. The challenge begins as Dawn and Heather were on one side, with their blindfolds on while Eva and Lindsay were SWNGNG on the trapeze. DJ turns to Jeff and taps his shoulder, gaining the arty dude's attention. So, yo, where's Bunny at? DJ asks Jeff, who flinches at the question. I forgot, Jeff was trying to find the right words to say, but as he looked at DJ, he saw how emotional was getting from his hesitation and realized he had to tell the truth. DJ, dude, I'm sorry to say this but Bunny's gone away. Oh, Jeff told DJ the truth, but I don't think that was a good idea since I don't think he can handle hearing this. Naruto thought as he watched DJ walk away from the team, looking sad before he dropped to his knees and screamed at the sky, screaming Bunny's name. And I was right. He thought, seeing his teammates screaming to the sky in sorrow for his lost pet. Unaware of anyone, one of the base members hears and sees DJ's emotional state and decides to sneak away from everyone else. Back with the challenge, Eva was SWNGNG, hanging onto it with her legs while her arms were stretched out towards Dawn, who was waiting for her, blindfolded. Okay Dawn, get ready to jump on my count. Eva says as Dawn just nods calmly as if she isn't worried about the jump. Okay. Dawn says as she prepares to wait for Eva's count. Eva looks down and sees she was about to swing back, so she begins her count. 1, 2, 3, jump. Eva yells. Dawn hears this and processes to jump off the board she was on, towards Eva as the jock catches her, and the two swing to safety as their teammates cheer. Yes, you did it. Naruto cheers, feeling relieved that Dawn didn't fall into the water and get shocked by the jellyfish. Confessional, Dawn. I knew I could trust Eva with this. And I knew where she was positioned the whole time. Dawn says as she sits in the stall with her legs crossed. I can detect everyone's auras even if my eyes are blocked, it was simple like that. She says. End confessional. Static. Confessional, Chris. Damn it. Chris yells, slapping his forehead since he forgot about Dawn's abilities. That girl's powers just like to take the fun out of things sometimes. End confessional. Alright gophers, it's your turn. Chris yells, looking at the two gophers on the trapeze. Lindsay was on her trapeze, hanging onto it with her legs as she looked at Heather. Okay, 1, 2. Lindsay counts, seeing Heather nod her head, telling her she was ready to jump. She swings forward at Heather and sees now is the time to tell her to jump. 3, jump. She says, but she soon sees she was SWNGNG back and sees Heather was about to jump. Wait. No. Don't, not yet. The blonde bombshell tries to stop Heather from jumping, but it is too late as Heather jumps and misses Lindsay before she lands in the water, where she gets violently shocked by the jellyfish. Ah! Heather screams out from the electric shock as everyone winces at the sight. Oh! That's a point to the killer base. Chris says, closing his eyes as Heather continues to scream in pain while everyone else present just winces, well, all except for Gwen, who smiles. Confessional, Gwen. Ah, sometimes the universe just gives you freebie. Gwen says with a smile as she looks up and throws up 2 thumbs up to the universe for the sweet justice from earlier that day. End confessional. After that incident, Heather was instructed to head towards the medical tent to get treated for her jellyfish stings. And along the way, she was angry about the failure of a challenge. I can't believe I trusted that blonde dumb bitch. Heather was complaining about Lindsay and her screw-up, but gets cut off by a shock from the jellyfish that was attached to her head. Once the shock had stopped, Heather glared up at the jellyfish. Stupid jellyfish. She shouts at it. As if it heard her, the jellyfish lets out another electric shock, electrocuting Heather once more. Aw! She screams from the electrocution as the jellyfish continues this for some time until it finally stops, letting Heather sigh out of relief. She continues to walk towards the medical tent and arrives to see Chef, who is still in his nurse outfit, taking care of Trent while Courtney is lying on a bed, still unconscious. Once Heather takes a seat on a bed beside Courtney, does the CIT finally wake up? Where am I? You're in the infirmary. Heather says as Courtney turns to her and sees the jellyfish on top of her head, and was confused at first but quickly catches on that a challenge where jellyfish were involved, and she couldn't help but find the sight funny. Nice hat. Courtney says with a smirk as Heather glares at her. Bite me. Heather sneers at Courtney before another shock courses through her body from the jellyfish, as she grunts from the pain. Once the shock stopped, she turned to Nurse Chef. Got anything for removing jellyfish? She desperately asks, hoping that there was a way to get rid of the annoying jellyfish on her head. Fortunately for her, Chef nods as she sighs in relief. Good. That was all Heather said before she finally passed out from the pain. Courtney sighs as she looks out of the tent and sees something that surprises her. She sees Duncan walking backward, holding a carrot in one hand as he's leading a little Legomorph that was eerily similar to Bunny. What's Duncan doing with a rabbit? Courtney asks, seeing the sight of Duncan leading a rabbit. Curious, she leaves the tent and starts discreetly following the two. We see the campers were at the base of the 1,000-foot cliff, where some of them saw 2 sleds leaning against a tree. And now, the leg. The blind toboggan race. Chris says. You were actually serious about the race. Naruto says as Chris just grins. Yes I was. Chris says before turning to each team will have a driver and a navigator. The driver steers while the navigator shouts the directions. Oh, and the driver will be blindfolded. He says, and the campers gasp at hearing that. Chris looks at them and sees just how much were left. There's not a lot of you left. I keep losing you guys. Haha. Okay, for our willing campers, it'll be Gwen and Cody for the Gophers. He says, causing Gwen to sigh out loud while Cody just looks nervous about something as Chris turns to the base. And for the base, it'll be Naruto and DJ. He says. Naruto smiles, feeling happy he was finally involved in a challenge as he turns to his partner for the challenge and sees DJ looking depressed. This makes him frown in concern, but before he can think further on it, Chris calls for the 4 to follow him up to the top of the cliff as they go up the cliff, but DJ hangs back from them. Once they'd reached the top of the cliff, Naruto looked down and saw just how steep the cliff actually was, and the sight was making him get nervous. Oh, man. Naruto, DJ, I know you're sad about your pet, I know who it is to lose someone you deeply love, but now's the time to focus, dude. Since this is life or death, and I really like living. Bunny deserted me, how can I continue going on knowing he left me? DJ sighs sadly, not feeling like doing anything as he missed Bunny. Naruto sighs, not knowing what to say. On one hand, he did want to tell DJ the truth about what happened to Bunny, but after seeing how DJ reacted to Jeff's lie and how he is at the moment, he decided against it. He hears something to his side and turns to see Chef coating the bottom of the two sleds in some sort of grease. Just lubing them up. Get a little more speed going down, he. Chef says with a sadistic smirk while laughing a bit as he goes back to coating grease onto the sleds. Dude, please let's forget about that and focus on the challenge, and maybe also staying alive at the end. Naruto says, trying to reason with his large teammate to at least focus, but DJ just shakes his head. I'm sorry Naruto, but I can't. That was all DJ says before walking away from the rocker to be alone before the challenge would begin, as Naruto just smacks his face with his hand and runs it down as he groans. Confessional, Naruto. I'm about to die, all because of a dead rabbit, not how I thought I'd go out. Naruto says, looking at the camera in the stall with a look of defeat. End confessional. After a few more coats, DJ and Cody were instructed to be the drivers. Naruto tried to say he could be the driver, but Chris told him he couldn't and only be the navigator. The two teams sit on the sleds with nervous, frightened expressions. Chris appears, holding an air horn, as he walks over to the base's sled while Chef was behind the Gopher's sled. Get ready, get set, Go. Chris yells while blowing on the air horn as he and Chef push the two teams with their feet and the two sleds quickly down the cliff. The two teams were zooming down the cliff, passing rocks and trees as Gwen sees a tree in front of them. Right. Gwen yells, making Cody steer to the right, narrowly dodging the tree. Gwen looks and left. DJ, move. There's a tree in front of us. Naruto yells, seeing they were heading towards a tree. He looks at DJ and sees he is still depressed and isn't doing anything, so he curses under his breath and leans to the left, causing the sled to shift in direction, and they narrowly miss the tree. Naruto sighs in relief at this and turns back to DJ. DJ, please focus here man. All I want now is for us to survive this. He yells, hoping DJ would at least listen to him, but he hears nothing from DJ and he continues to zoom down the cliff. Meanwhile, behind them, the Gopher's sled hit a rock and propelled off it like it was a ramp as they soared through the air. Whoa! We're really flying now. Cody yells, feeling the speed they were going at and the wind hitting his face, not realizing they were actually flying due to his BLNDFLD, but Gwen was screaming in terror. Fortunately, they land in a river and Gwen sighs in relief for this. But her relief is short-lived as she looks ahead and sees they were not just on a river but the river was heading toward a waterfall. I'm not ready to die. Gwen screams in terror. The sled goes down the waterfall and Gwen closes her eyes, not wanting to see how she'd die, but the sled lands onto a log that was on the rocks at the bottom and bounces off from it, causing the sled to once again be in the air, and they manage to land back onto the hill. Back with DJ and Naruto, Naruto was pretty much the one steering the sled at this point as DJ was still depressed and not doing anything. So far, Naruto only had to steer them away from trees and a few boulders here and there, and it had been smooth sailing thus far. Weird, no traps or anything to stop us. Maybe Chris is going easy on us. Naruto says, feeling rather relieved by this. However, this was short-lived as Naruto's instincts suddenly started shouting at him to duck his head. He was confused by this for a moment, but when he turned his head to where his instincts were yelling at him, he ducked and narrowly avoided a SWNGNG log. He looks back and sees the SWNGNG log swing back to the upper part of a tree, seemingly where it came from. He turns back forward and sees more SWNGNG logs, me and my big mouth. He mutters, cursing himself for jinxing it. Naruto then starts steering the sled, moving around the SWNGNG logs as they pass through this trap. He then sees one log heading straight to DJ and Naruto sees DJ wasn't moving yet. Duck. The rocker yells as he pushes DJ's head down and they narrowly avoid the log while also leaving the logs section of the race. Realizing he couldn't do all the task by himself, Naruto tries to reason with DJ once again. DJ, I really need you to focus here, bro. Bunny would want you to live. Naruto yells, hoping DJ will listen to him, but like before, DJ shakes his head. Why, he left me, so why would I want to live? DJ sighs. Hearing this, Naruto was close to losing it as he finally decides that DJ should know the truth about Bunny. Dude, I need to tell you something important about what happened to Bunny. Bunny, he didn't abandon you, he's... Naruto was about to tell DJ the real reason of Bunny's disappearance when... Hey DJ. He hears someone calling out to DJ from the bottom of the cliff. Looking ahead, he sees Duncan had returned as he was holding something in his hands. Look who I found. Duncan yells, holding his hands above his head, and opens them, revealing a very similar rabbit in his palms. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise, but he was happy since that would mean DJ could finally focus on the challenge. He's with Duncan. DJ, Duncan has Bunny. Naruto yells, and this catches DJ's attention. Don't tease me, man. I'm already disappointed with myself over Bunny. DJ says, not wanting to believe him. I'm not, man. He's really with the others. Naruto yells. Hearing this, DJ's curiosity gets the better of him and he lifts his blndfld to peaks and his eyes widen in shock and happiness at the sight of his beloved pet. Bunny, you came back. DJ shouts from pure joy to the point where tears begin to form in his eyes. But he quickly shakes his head and lowers his blndfld back down. Alright, let's do this. He yells, this time with fiery determination. Awesome. Naruto yells and the two begin working together. Right. Left. Left. Right. The rocker yells as DJ steers in the direction Naruto told him to, but as they were moving along smoothly, Gwen and Cody land beside them and were back in the race. Right. Left. Right. Gwen instructs Cody as the geek steers. The two teams were neck and neck for some time until the Gophers started pulling away in front. Naruto saw this and knew they had to catch up. Left. Right. Naruto once again instructs DJ as the brick house steers in the direction he's told, but suddenly, an explosion right next to them, nearly taking them out. What was that? DJ asks, wondering what just happened, and Naruto is confused too. I don't know, I thought we got past all of Chris's traps. Naruto says. Back on top of the cliff, Chris was holding a detonator as he had a grin. We had a few leftover explosives from the first challenge and I really wanted to use them today since I hate to waste. Chris says before he pulls the detonator again. Back with the two teams, the Gophers were still taking the lead as the base were trying to catch up, but they were caught in an explosion, launching the sled high into the sky. The two teams below saw this and the Gophers started to cheer, seeing the base had lost their racers while theirs were coming down to the finish line. The base slumped their heads in defeat when all of a sudden, the base sled crash lands on the finish line as Naruto looks at himself, checking for any injuries. We're alive. Naruto asks himself as he looks for any injuries but sees none. He looked around and saw they were still on the island before looking down to see they had crossed the finish line. This makes him realize something. We're alive, and we won. He yells as the base cheers in victory. All of the base go over to the two, but DJ is quick to remove his blndfld and separate from everyone, and heads over to Duncan who is still holding the rabbit. The delinquent happily hands Bunny over to the brick house who spins around while looking at the rabbit. Thanks, Duncan. DJ sniffs as he looks at the delinquent. You're the best. Whatever, man. It's just a stupid rabbit. Duncan shrugs DJ's gratitude like it was nothing. It was then Courtney made herself known and walked over to Duncan as they started to talk about something. Meanwhile, Naruto was looking at DJ cuddling Bunny against his cheek and he was confused since he was sure Bunny was dead, and he wasn't the only one, but fortunately for him, someone seemingly read his mind and had the answer to his question. That is not Bunny. Dawn says, making Naruto jump a little before looking down at her. Huh? What do you mean? Naruto asks. The rabbit DJ is holding is not Bunny, he is one actually Bunny's brothers. Dawn says. Bunny has siblings on the island? Huh, who knew? But how could you tell? Naruto asks, wondering how Dawn could know this. He sees her looking at him with a smirk and he remembers something. Ah, aura reading powers? He asks and Dawn nods. Yes, I sensed its aura and saw he had a similar aura to what Bunny had, yet it was different. And that only happens if they're twins. So, I figured it out from that. Dawn says. Naruto thinks about what she said and looks at the new Bunny and he sees how similar he is to the original Bunny. Her explanation has to make sense. Oh, I see. Naruto says as he smiles at Dawn. Man, you keep impressing me, Dawn. Is there anything you can't do? He says and Dawn smiles at this while a pink tint appears on her cheeks. We have yet to see. Dawn says, giggling. Hey. The two turn and see Duncan walking up to them. Listen, I overheard you two talking and I see you two know that not it's Bunny. So. He says and the two quickly understand what he was trying to say. Don't worry, your secret is safe with us. Dawn says and Naruto nods. Yeah, man. We'll keep this to ourselves. Naruto says while putting his hands behind his head while grinning, looking to the side. But I'm not too sure if speaking to us was a good idea since we're on TV, bro. He says. Duncan was confused by what the rocker said. Naruto just points to the side and Duncan looks at where he was pointing and sees the camera crew recording them. Confessional, Duncan. I'm not nice, okay? Duncan says, glaring at the camera. Just to set the record straight. He says, pointing at the camera with an angry look. End confessional. The two teams were together with Heather and Trent back with the Gophers, but Heather had bandages on her face while Trent was in a wheelchair that Chef was pushing, still under the effects of the blowfish. And the base are the winners of the toboggan race. Chris announces and the base cheer in victory while the Gophers slump their heads in defeat, knowing they were returning to the elimination ceremony. But unfortunately, Chris says, causing the base to stop cheering as everyone looks at him. I said this was a blind challenge, and DJ took off his BLNDFLD for a moment and that just broke the number one rule. Meaning, that the base are disqualified. So, the real winners are, the Screaming Gophers. Finally. He yells. The Gophers all cheer, feeling oi and relieved as they finally break their losing streak while the base were shocked as DJ looks sheepish. Churs turns to the shocked base. I'll see you all at the campfire ceremony. Go rest up Gophers, you deserve it. Chris says. The Gophers cheer and process to leave the area, heading back to their cabin to celebrate their long overdue victory while the base were busy processing what just happening. Ah, man, this sucks. Naruto says after a while. Time skip, later that evening. Location, the campfire ceremony. After so long, we return to the dramatic campfire ceremony where soon 10 would become 9. The base were sitting on the logs, waiting to hear if they were safe as Chris appeared by his barrel, holding 9 marshmallows on a plate. Who wants a treat? Chris asks as he shows off the plate. A tasty goodie that represents exemption, security, peace of mind, and safety. Since it's been a while since you all were here, let me remind you this. If you don't get a marshmallow, you have to walk to the dock of shame, board the boat of loser, leave Total Drama Island and you can never come back, ever. He says, causing most of the base to get nervous. Chris holds up 3 marshmallows and looks at the base. Let's see. Chris says as if he was trying to pick who should get on. One for Dawn, one for Jeff, and one for Bridget. He says, throwing the marshmallows at the three he called out as they happily take them. Chris then picks up 4 more and looks back at the remaining ones. Duncan, Harold, Eva and Courtney. He says, throwing the 4 marshmallows at the mentioned campers who were relieved to be safe. And then there were 3. DJ, Katie, and Naruto. Chris looks at them as he picks up one of the 2 remaining marshmallows and begins tossing it in the air. There are only 2 marshmallows left and you 3 had a hand in being the reason why your team lost today, but only one of you didn't cause that much damage. Chris says, looking at the 3 before turning to one of them and smiles. Naruto, you get to fight for another day, my man. You're safe. He says, tossing the marshmallow to the rocker who catches it and lets out a sigh of relief. DJ and Katie glance at one another, realizing that there was 1 marshmallow left and this got them nervous. And the final marshmallow goes to Chris says. Katie starts to shake in her seat while DJ swallows the lump in his throat as Chris looks at them and throws the marshmallow at one of them. Katie. He says, with Katie being in shock at this but she happily eats the marshmallow. DJ on the other hand, was in shock that he was voted off but he understood since he was the one who messed everything up throughout the day. DJ, the boat of losers waits for you my brother. The host says and DJ nods his head. He stands up from his log and turns to everyone and looks down at the ground. Sorry for letting y'all down like that. DJ says, feeling shame for making his team lose but the bass just go to him and some of the girls hug him while the dudes just pat him on. It's cool DJ, it was fun while it lasted. Jeff says as he pats the brick house on his shoulder. Take care of yourself, and Bunny too. He says. This makes DJ crack a smile as he and Jeff share a fist bump. Sure thing man. DJ says as he starts his walk towards the dock of shame. And just when he was about to leave the bonfire area, he turned back to his team and flashed them one last time. Good luck y'all. Win this. We will bro. Naruto yells as most of the base agree, waving goodbye at DJ. We'll miss you, DJ. He yells, DJ nods and turns around and resumes his walk to the boat of losers. Once DJ had left, Chris looked at the now 9 base members. Well, that's it, gang. Head back to your cabins. I'll see you all in the next challenge. Chris says before he turns and leaves the bonfire area. After that, everyone started leaving the area, either heading back to their cabin for some R&R or somewhere else to do something. Dawn was walking in a direction when someone called out to her. Hey, Dawn. Dawn looks back and sees Naruto walking up to her. Could I ask you something? Naruto asks and Dawn nods. Sure, what is it? Dawn asks. Do you want to hang out and look at the stars with me? Naruto asks, rubbing the back of his head as Dawn blushes a little at this but she quickly remembers something and she frowns. Actually, I cannot. I'm heading back into the forest to do there. Dawn says. This makes Naruto look at her with a surprised look. Again. Naruto asks and Dawn nods. Naruto sighs as he looks at her. Just what are you doing out there? He asks, since this was bugging him after his conversation with DJ earlier that day and he really wanted to know what she was doing out there. Dawn stiffens at this as she starts to get nervous and looks around. Oh, you know, stuff. Dawn says. Naruto looked at her, seeing she was getting nervous. Stuff? Naruto asks, wanting to make sure he heard that correctly as Dawn nods. He narrows his eyes a bit as he looks at her and Dawn starts to sweat a bit. Okay then. Guess I'll wait for you. He says and Dawn mentally sighs out of relief as she looks at him and nods. Yeah. I'll see you in a bit, Naruto. Dawn says, smiling at him before she turns around and quickly hurries into the forest, leaving Naruto there, watching her disappear into the trees. Just what is she doing out there? Naruto asks, putting his hand on his chin as he thinks about just what could she be doing in the forest. Hell, she's been acting like this for some time and he wanted to know the reason why. And with Naruto being suspicious of Dawn and what could she be doing in the forest, we end this episode of Total Drama Island. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for more such crossovers. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Pixel's fanbook on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.